All right. What is going on, everybody? I hope you're not frozen out like I am in Atlanta here. It is snowpocalypse. But we warmed up and defrosted, and you are live on Shally's Alley, January 10th, our second episode of the January season. I keep getting all these alerts that say, weather storm watching, warning, stay home. It's like, oh my God, stop annoying me. I get it already, okay? Anyways, so happy winter to those of you that have snowed in. I heard it snowed in Texas too.
Yeah.
You got any snow up there?
We got fire. So the worst fires LA has ever seen.
I heard about
basically.
That.
Yeah.
Oh, that's terrible. Yeah. Let me send you some snow.
Yeah, send us some snow. It's crazy. NorCal's been getting some rain and snow, but SoCal's like dry as a bone. And I can't remember in my 42 years fires this bad. I mean, I think they've said it's the worst ever, but I can't remember.
Can you breathe the
January.
air?
Well, luckily I'm in Orange County, so I'm not all that close to the fires. But we know people up there, and we've been watching it, and the smoke kind of starting to build, and we're all in a bunch of valleys, right?
That's
so it
terrible.
just sits in, and but I just got out of the water. I was surfing, so I guess life.
Oh, bummer! Wow, that's a little early. Well, actually, I guess not.
Yeah, it's 10 o'clock here. So
right. Well, for everybody that doesn't know who you are, our special guest today on Shally's Alley is Fletcher Wimbush, and he is an expert in, how shall we say, pre-employment assessment and
talent assessment is what I
talent assessment. Okay,
collectively in
pre and post. Gotcha.
Well, mostly pre, but I mean, you think of pre-employment assessments is where we started with formal assessment structured tests, but there's more to it in assessment tests per se.
Right. It's not just a test.
Yeah, or assessments. I mean, they're not personality or behavioral assessments aren't tests, by the way. Like, there's not a right or wrong answer to a behavioral or a preferential type of question, right? Now, as opposed to an aptitude test or a skill test,
whether or not you can do the skill, right?
Or you have
a lot of folks in recruiting,
right?
Right. Yeah, a lot of folks in recruiting don't have much to do with the assessment stage. Usually that's something a company will have designed or hire out, and so recruiters will send them the assessment and then package with it. Most of the people that I think are out there listening probably haven't had the opportunity to evaluate and select assessment vendors or anything like that. So it's good that we kind of demystify that. I'm glad that you brought that up, that it's not a test, or I mean there can be. Now, your father started an assessment business long ago, right? And you
like 1980. So when we're at 45 years this year in February,
before the internet, right?
So the anniversary's coming up here. Yeah.
Yeah.
It was like, or maybe it was like leap day. It's weird. I have the articles of incorporation, so
from a leap. So 4 years, you have an anniversary.
Yeah.
So like breaking down the components, you've got like the assessment stage can include interviewing.
Yep.
And recruiters should know how to do that. And so you have some interviewing.
They're part of it. They're part of that process,
framework, right?
Yeah.
And then you've got the assessment, which could be questions that are open-ended, don't necessarily have, like, some people might know. What are some of the famous ones, like
DISC or Myers-Briggs?
Myers-Briggs, there you go.
Yeah, some of those.
And then you have tests about someone's skill and aptitude, and then they have, so there's different things. But so, and folks may not know this. You get around. You're pretty famous, pretty well known in the circuit, and you've conducted over 10,000 interviews and advised with more like 1,500 companies or something like that. In your experience, what are the most common but overlooked red flags during hiring? Part one of a two-part question.
Yeah. So the most common but overlooked.
Not the most common red flags, but the most common red flags people miss. By the way, a red flag, for those of you that might not know that because you're in a different culture, a red flag is a warning sign, or it's something that alerts you to the fact that there may be something off, or this may not be the right candidate or the right fit for the organization. So think of a red flag as
okay. I got it. Finally, so this is a tough question, by the way, because I think of things like job hopping, and I'm not a fan of job hopping. So, all you recruiters out there who are defending job hoppers, you're wrong. There's actually science says you're wrong too, by the way.
Well, yeah, it depends if it's a contractor, though. I want to make sure that we, because people who do contract, like I had a friend, Eric Jakewith, who was an avid contractor, and he would specifically set up 3 to 6 month gigs on purpose, but there was consulting and you had a beginning and an end. So think
about it this way. You want to hire the person to work for you for 2 years, 5 years, 10 years.
Well, not in this case. He wasn't hireable for 2 years.
So would it, if then you're hiring somebody for a 6 month, 12-month gig, right? So that would be, misinterpreting what you see on a work history.
Right.
By saying, oh, this person, sticks into rounds for jobs for 1 to 2 years. And part of my ideal candidate profile is that somebody will be with me for the next 5+ years because they'll grow. I'm going to hire them. I'm going to develop them. I'm going to, I want them. My goal for this person is to progress within the organization. When you hire people with that kind of track record, they've told you everything you need to know about what they're likely to do. Now, if I was hiring a contractor, if I needed a Salesforce implementation or whatever, then I would look at contractors and I would say, do they have experience working as a contractor? Because actually, I don't want to hire the person who's been at their company for 10 years to do that job, because they actually don't know how to operate as a contractor in a 6-month engagement. That doesn't fit their mode of operation naturally. Could they do it? Yes, potentially, but it would be a red flag.
So what you're saying is, if you're looking for somebody to do a short-term gig, hire someone that's on short-term gigs. But if you're looking for a long-term employee, you got to look for people that have that ability to have long-term potential. But I'll ask you, how often within what period of time, right? Like somebody might have gotten a job and their company was acquired, or and this happens a lot on resumes, I've noticed, where it looks like a different job. So like I started working for company X, and then on my resume it says company X and then company Y, and it looks like 1 year at each one. But really, I never switched jobs. It was just 2 different companies. So you got to be careful not to.
For job seekers, I highly recommend helping the reader. Resume, like the reader of the resume, make that connection.
These are both the same job.
I'm cool with all that, of course. These things do happen. And look, there's no hard and fast rule to it, but that's just kind of a general way of saying, looking at a resume and saying, hey, is there high potential here or not? And a way, and to filter through some of that. What I found here 15,000 interviews later now is every time now I'm up to 15,000. That's my outdated numbers. That was from 5 years ago, my 10,000 number. I slowed my pace by a lot. But anyways, I would interview these folks, and look, they always have a reason. So here's the hidden thing, right? It's everybody has a good reason for why they left their jobs, but without digging into the real truth and really pressing on that hard, that's the hidden red flag, right? I left because I was laid off. Well, why were you laid off? Why were you laid off and not somebody else? It just begs that question, but nobody asks it, right? Well, they were bought and acquired, and so they laid us off. Well, why lay you off and not the rest of the staff? Because the reality is these things don't happen, right? When there's layoffs, they don't lay everybody off. When a company gets acquired, they don't lay everyone off, right? So why you, not somebody, as
and the reasons could be that department was eliminated and you didn't have a choice, or it could be you were picked out of that department to be eliminated.
So then you start to go down that list, though, and you go, in this other job, why'd you leave? Well, I didn't get along with my supervisor, we had a difference of opinions, and then you go down the next one, and there's going to be this really kind of plausible sounding reason for every single one of those. The reality is, if you dig into those things, that the truth will come out. And if you just don't accept the surface level answer, then you will find out a lot more. I mean, it was pretty funny. I mean, like, well, not funny. I mean, it's sad. And I felt really bad for this gal. I mean, I thought she was actually a pretty marketable candidate. I was interviewing this like CPA because they're, you can't find CPAs to work in public accounting, period. Like they don't exist anymore, but there's a few obviously, but as a whole, they're like scarce, like the rarest bird you're ever going to meet. And this gal had like, a pretty nice little career, right out of college, nice trajectory, worked for like a mid-sized firm, and she was let go. She was laid off. And I was like, you're laid off like right before tax season? Like that's inconceivable. There's no tax firm on earth that couldn't use an extra tax professional in their firm for tax season. There's not a single one.
About
the industry, right? Yeah, this is just kind of like, if you're in this space, this is something that
tax season is not when you need to go find somebody to do the job.
Yeah, and not when you're letting go staff, paring back. Like tax firms have plenty of work to do. They have too much work to do. They need all the bodies they can get, period. So it's like, this just doesn't really add up. And I was like, so I kind of pressed her on it, and boy, the truth came out. Like, basically she was promoted beyond her ability to achieve. She was working for a partner who did not think she was doing a good job, flat out, like did not think she was capable. And ultimately she told me that in not so many words.
Now that could be in that setting or in that job. Maybe there's another setting or another job where she would perform, but in that setting, in that job. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. But it makes it very difficult. And so really what the reality is that she was probably promoted beyond her ability. And there was mistakes probably made on both sides. But for her to come back into the market and try to find a job at that same level would have been inappropriate. She would have found herself in a very similar situation. It would have been highly unlikely that she would have been successful going into her next job at the same level. She needed to take a step back so that she could develop better her skill set, so that she could take that step forward in the future. And this was an interesting scenario because she probably is, somebody who has that long-term potential would
somewhere else in a different place. Right.
But if you threw her in the deep end,
it
wasn't going to work
for that situation. And that's why you've got to create interviews customized to your organization and specifically the role. But I completely derailed you because the question originally was, what are the most common overlooked red flags? And I think job hopping is something that a lot of folks, whether they sit on one side or the other of the fence, definitely don't overlook. So what's a commonly overlooked one?
The over is the reasons why.
Okay.
So people take the reason why at its face value and they don't dig.
So what's overlooked is the reason of okay.
Yeah. And with the people don't inspect that reason carefully enough.
Got it. So the second part of the question is failing to do so. How does that impact the long-term organization performance? In other words, in this case, I'm just going to jump in here and say, well, they let her go in the middle of tax season, so I can assume that other people had to carry the workload, which maybe meant they couldn't take on as many clients or, potentially maybe make less money. So that's short-term. But what are the long-term organizational performance issues that come up with something like that?
Yeah, I mean, those are short and midterm effects, right?
Yeah.
But the long term on burnout, right? You're now your best people are going to eventually
constantly replace, and
because you're burning them out, because you're overloading them with work. Now culture erodes, right? The more turnover you have in an organization, you cannot establish a strong organizational culture if you are burning your people out and you're having high turnover. Like, culture is developed, it grows, it evolves, and now it either evolves in the wrong direction because you're constantly turning people over.
Devolves.
You can't establish it well because of that, right? Or it evolves because you start to have really loyal, high-performing people who fit your core values as an organization, and they do a great job exhibiting it and also disseminating it to everybody else and the people who are on the fringes and the new people who come into the organization. And so all of this, it's really a downward spiral, but it's $1 million problem in
and
reality.
Just continues to erode. Right.
Yeah. It's preventing.
It seems like an easy fix, but
Yeah,
it's
well,
overlooked. That's why I asked the question.
We're dealing with human beings. There's nothing easy about hiring and talent selection, and there's no silver bullets in this. And it's such a nuanced problem. It's like getting married. I mean, 50% of marriages end in divorce. Like, well, I mean, most employment relationships end in divorce too,
right.
but some last a hell of a lot longer than others. And that's the reality. The ones that last longer are more productive. It's more beneficial for the person in the job. That means, I mean, you don't stick around in a job unless you're getting some personal reward or, it's not helping you both, as a person, like psychologically, you're happy, you're safe, you feel comfortable, you like the environment. We spend more time with our coworkers than we do with our family members. I mean, so you don't stick around if you're not getting that. So that's personally good for me as a long-term employee. And then also professionally, it gives me the opportunity to grow, right? So it's hitting my personal and professional growth needs by, staying somewhere longer. Every time you go into a new environment, I mean, you and I are a little bit older.
Takes a while to get established.
We'll teach an old dog new tricks. I mean, but that's true for a 21-year-old too, man. Teach a 21-year-old a new trick too. Like, I'm surprised how many young Gen Ys I interface with that suck at technology. Like, people say they're great at it, but they're not actually. Like, man, I really have to work hard to
get them. You can't assume anybody's, but
really good at it. And I mean, you have to work hard at training them to use the tools that are available. I mean, you're training people on how to use all sorts of, fancy tools.
Hasn't changed much. Doesn't matter how young they get.
Yeah, right. They struggle to adopt, right? I can't get my team to use AI at a high level. Like, I'm leap years above them
that's a different skill set.
It's a different skill set.
It's a different skill. Yeah, that's not a technology skill set. That's a critical thinking. You got to have critical thinking. But I don't want to digress too far. You mentioned the 50% divorce rate, and that reminded me of this saying that we have that 50% of interviews are correct. Like, literally, interviewing is a 50-50 chance. Like, people talk about, and it's kind of a way of saying interviewing
it's like a 35% chance actually. But
right. But the saying is that, interview is kind of a halfway. You don't really, it doesn't really predict success. But the reason I brought that up is because I want to ask you this question: who's to blame with a bad hiring decision?
The hiring manager. Hiring manager.
Why not the candidate?
The hiring manager's fault.
Why not the candidate?
Look, the candidate's looking for a job. They're desperate. They're eager.
Maybe not.
Yeah, maybe not. But irregardless, they're looking for a job, and the hiring manager, the organization as a whole, has an obligation to educate the candidate on what the job is, what the opportunity is, what the culture is, what they'll be doing, what's going to be expected of them, so that the candidate can be a participant in making this decision. They do have a role in this, but at the end of the day, it's the hiring manager. It's the person who's making the decision. It's the person who's saying, yes, hire this person. It's their responsibility to make sure that this is a good fit for that individual, helping them make that their part of the decision by giving them enough information, access, opportunity to learn and to explore and to collaborate with the organization or the team or the hiring manager, whoever, whatever environment you're going to put them into. You got to give them enough exposure to that so that the candidate, can say, you know what, this is going to be fit me. I'm going to be happy here. I see my ability to do this job. I see my potential to do it.
If you're the hiring manager and you pull the wool over their eyes, you can't blame
them. Well, that's part of it. Or you just neglect to inform.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Maybe you're not pulling the wool over their eyes, but you just
don't know any better.
Didn't bring it up. Right. Yeah. The reason I was talking about this is why we do calibrations in organizations that have mature interviewing cycles, where we calibrate and take a look at the scorecards for interviews to make sure that we don't have hiring managers that routinely overscore or underscore. And I'll tell you that I'm sure you run into this a lot more than I do, because I'm usually front of the funnel. And most of my experience is, getting people into the organization. But I've had some situations where I identified what everybody in the entire organization thought was our best interviewer, and it was someone who basically always gives everybody a 5 out of 5. Occasionally a 4 out of 5, but to me, I felt like saying, I wasn't in a position to do this, but I felt like saying to the leadership team, we need to get rid of this person on the interview panel. Like, not fire them, but like, this person shouldn't be doing interviews because it's not contributing.
Yeah. It's not adding value. There's no critical feedback. I mean, and critical being
everybody gets a 5. Okay. Yeah. It's not possible that every candidate is even, especially when you have other interviewers that are, calibrating on both sides. So it's important to take a look at the interviews scorecards to make sure that you're not continuing to promote a hiring manager, continuing to give a hiring manager the responsibility for interviewing when they're not exactly making a decision. They're sort of always just saying, oh yeah, this is great. Besides that though, besides hiring managers that like always say no, which is the other opposite, or they always say yes, what can you walk us through the most critical and challenging step in a high impact interview process?
Welcome to the Hire Her podcast, where women in talent call all the shots. We know, another recruiting podcast, just what the industry needs. Okay, but hear us out. You ever spend hours sourcing that perfect candidate, but they end up ghosting you harder than your hinge date? Or finally, you get that hiring manager feedback, only for them to, of course, say, can we see more candidates? Lame, right? But let's talk about what's really lame in the industry. How is it that 65% of recruiters are brilliant women, yet most of the decision makers look like a convention for middle-aged dudes named Brad?
That's where we come in. Hire Her isn't just another podcast about hiring trends you already heard like 50 times this week. We're here to elevate women in talent, share their career journeys, and make sure they take the lead. Because let's face it, if recruiting is the backbone of every company, why are we still fighting for a seat at the table? So whether you're a recruiter, a talent leader, or just someone trying to swim through the sausage fest of TA leadership, we got you, girl. Welcome to Hire Her, the recruiting podcast where women's voices aren't just heard, but they're leading the conversation.
So subscribe now, because middle management Brad sure as hell isn't going to do it for you.
Have you ever been to a webinar where the topic was great, but there wasn't enough time to ask questions or have a dialogue to learn more? Well, welcome to HR and Payroll 2.0, the podcast where those post-webinar questions become episodes. We feature HR practitioners, leaders, and founders of HR, payroll, and workplace innovation and transformation, sharing their insights and lessons learned from the trenches. We dig in to share the knowledge and tips that can help modern HR and payroll leaders navigate the challenges and opportunities ahead. So join us.
Well, I'm glad you're using scorecards. So, I mean, everything needs to have a scorecard. So using scorecards and using structured interviews. Now, structured interview doesn't mean that you don't dig deep and get curious. And
no, it just means you have
a baseline.
And they each have different questions. They're not asking the same question.
Yeah, like core questions that you ask every single time at certain stages or certain points, or core things that you do, like a working interview or a project-based interview or an assessment, right? But, so structure to the process that you're consistently doing, hitting the same topics or same things or using the same core question aligned with your scorecard items. And then scoring, but also defending your score. So, and maybe in your case, with the person who's giving 5 stars or saying yes all the time, then I'd be a little harder on them to be like, defend your score. Why? Like, give me evidence, not just you liked them or it felt right, or like, because it felt right or you like them is not evidence.
It's not evidence.
It's not evidence.
They were a good interviewer and they provided good notes, but the notes were always positive. In other words, it was one of these people that I think just felt bad writing negative things.
Sure.
So they would pick out the candidates had positive traits and negative traits. The hiring manager was basically highlighting all the positive traits, very seldom highlighting any negative ones. And I feel like it was almost like I don't know if it's a personality thing or what but they just didn't want to say bad things about people.
Yeah, no, there are people that are like that, and they have their value in an organization, in a role, and can play certain roles really, really well. It might not be the appropriate role to put them in a selection committee necessarily, but could be in plenty of other
Or
roles.
How do you solve for that? Like, here's one way I solved for it: is when I teach about the pre-screening and interview. Again, it's not the full hiring like you do.
Yeah.
It's the front of the funnel. It's a 3-point scorecard. Okay. Yeah. And this is you're probably going to probably blast this to hell, but I got you on the show. So it's my chance to test whether or not it's a good idea. Right. You can correct me if I'm wrong. Please do. But what I do is I basically have the scorecard, has the attributes that we're looking for, that we're interviewing for. And there's 3 points. Basically, there's 0 if that wasn't observed. Mm-hmm. So if we're looking for salesmanship, 0 if it wasn't observed by the interviewer, 1 if it was observed by the interview, and 2 if it was observed and the person excels in the interviewer's opinion. So let's say you have 5 things. I'm just going to throw some out: salesmanship, communication skills, grit or persistence or whatever. Mm-hmm. So you go down the list. You go, okay, I observed it. That's a 1. I observed it. That's a 1. Didn't observe it. That's a 0. Observed it, and they're they excel. That's a 2. So
and I'm going to defend that because they gave me evidence and things like that.
Right.
Yeah. No, that's exactly. That's exactly how the essence of a scorecard and how it should be.
Right. But then that 5 hiring manager this is the problem I'm knocking down here is that they use the 5-point scorecard, and I don't think that's really good, because what usually that does is it goes -2, -1, 0, 1, 2. On that scale where 1 to 5, what really means 1 is nah and 5 is yay. Most of the time people go 3 all the way down or 5 all the way down. But with a 0, 1, and 2, I feel like you don't have the opportunity. If you observed it, give me an example when you defend. If it's excellent, give me an example with you defend. If you didn't observe it, then it's not a score. What do you think about that system? Am I really off base?
I love it. No, I mean, it really forces people to make a hard decision, right? And
they're not there really good.
Yeah. And like when we collect feedback on people who have been hired, right, and post-hire 3, 6, 12 months down the road, that's from a science perspective. We're looking at long-term, what were the outcomes there? It's always a 3-point scale that we force people. It's like they were not good, they were 1, satisfactory, 2, or they were great, right?
So you do say not good instead of not observed.
Well, this is post-hire, right? I'm saying.
Oh, post-hire.
So post-hire, right. It's definite. You're either
you got to be
not good, or they're okay, or they're great.
So obviously you have some clients, but even if you only have 2,000 clients, you don't have all the clients of all the employers in the world. Yeah. And even though there are other people that do what you do, and there are other people that do what I do, still this isn't very common. So why do so many companies completely fail to implement these kinds of systems? Why is this so uncommon? Well, in other words, why do you still have a job?
Yeah, why do I still have a job? Yeah, well, I think I mean, this even from your end, but I mean, hiring is obviously absolutely critical, but I think most organizations forget that it should be a foundational skill set as an organization, that they don't necessarily believe. They kind of think of it as this, it's like they think of it as maybe like doing their taxes, I guess maybe is a good amount. It's like this thing I got to do, I just got to do it, right? So they don't necessarily think of it as a fundamental core function of their business. Now, plenty of organizations do, by the way, and the best organizations in the world think about the hiring process as a core business function, and that they invest a lot of time and energy to have a system, a repeatable process, like you would in any other part of your business, like customer service or sales or product development, right? And, great organizations are great at things. They have systems and processes for core functions of their business, and hiring is a core function of every business, and it should be treated as such, and it should be treated with a high level of urgency and importance, because who you bring into your organization is going to dictate what happens to the success of it in the future. The guy, Brian Chesky, I was just watching his interview on hiring you've heard the founder mode concept, right?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Founder mode.
Yeah. He kind of coined this founder mode concept, right? And then he did this nice webinar or blog or whatever interview video on how that applies to the hiring process. And a lot of these like VCs and guys that are out there, They don't believe in having HR departments. HR is a compliance. That's doing your taxes, by the way. They believe in hiring managers being responsible for their hiring process. And it doesn't mean that
as if they were a founder building their team.
And Brian, he was like, I think the founder should be the final say on the first 450 hires within an organization too. So that's a lot, right? Because it's that important. I'm just using one guy's opinion that to punctuate how I feel about this, right? And why I've spent 26 years of my life thinking about talent acquisition, particularly talent assessment component of that, because who you get in your organization. I mean, and I'm a big sports fan. Look at football teams, look at the best sports teams, right? They hire great people who are great culture fits, and they have stability. They have stability at leadership. They have stability in their great players. Those great players stick around. Oh, by the way, I mean, I'm a 49ers fan. I mean, they did a great job of renegotiating contracts with their star players to, get them to maybe come down on their price a little bit to stick around. So that's buy-in. I'm bought into your culture. Like, I'll take a pay cut to stay here because I believe so much in what we're doing here in this organization, right? So these kinds of, it's so critical.
Well, yeah, what you're saying is active participation in the leadership team. But I think, once you're more than a startup, I think founder mode is a little bit obsessive.
So then at the leadership level, and
the leaders should have active participation in the.
They should be treating it like their own little business, right?
Don't let everybody just kind of choose whoever. I think, cultural alignment.
Yeah.
And
it trickles down perfectly, right? I mean, if I'm the VP of sales, I own this. Nobody's getting hired without me. Approving that. Or if that organization is massive, then it's the director of sales for the region, whatever, right? That person owns the outcome.
But so let me ask you, have you yourself ever worked inside a TA department?
No, I've never have.
Have you hired people for yourself?
Yes, absolutely.
So, even though you, okay.
Yeah.
How many roughly?
Oh, I don't know.
That you've hired?
Maybe 100.
Okay. One of the things that I get pushback on, and the reason I was going with this, like, obviously you're an expert in the field.
Yeah.
And nobody's going to come to you and say, hey, you don't know how to hire because you've only hired 100 people. I've hired 50,000, right? Like, that happens. Like, it's come back to me. I had a leader once that said, well, you're an expert in sourcing and recruiting, but you're not an expert in hiring. I hired, this was an executive at Facebook. Like, I hired everybody in this team. It's like 6,000 people and whatever, founder mentality and everything. And I'm listening to that and I'm going, okay. So I've only written maybe 100 lines of code, but I can tell you when software is shitty. I mean, right? Like, I'm like, hold on a second, time out. I didn't hire 6,000 people, but I can tell you that there's certain things that sometimes it's like, I feel like the pushback is this hubris that these organizations have, that they're, quite frankly, if you've hired 6,000 people, you probably made a few hiring mistakes. And what I'd like to know is how many of those 6,000 people stayed past their whatever, expiration date, and like, just
or were rated as top performers, or,
like, just because, right? So my question is, this still becomes a really critical factor in the success of an organization. And simply having interviewed 5,000 people and said everybody was a 5 doesn't really, like, that's not contributing.
Doesn't mean anything. Yeah.
Yeah. So why are we so bad at this? Why do we still today? It's freaking 2025. Why do we still suck at hiring?
Because we're humans. That's why. Kids are humans, and you talk about
AI
bias
now. Why do we still say we got machines?
Because the AI is only as good as the instructions. The instructions the humans give it, and the way they structure and execute it. So it's crazy, but it's because we're human beings, and this is why when I took this over, I think it's 12 or 13 years. I can't even remember now, but I was 31 and I was a leader in a business where hiring was my responsibility. And I had to hire a lot of people in lots of different roles, across from frontline to management roles. I was hiring all levels of the organization underneath me. And, I had a recruiting and HR department, but they were separated. So I had a dedicated recruiter on my team, but all they did was, source, find, screen, and deliver a, minimally viable candidate, right?
Okay.
That passed the, basic criteria. And then it was up to me and my leadership team to figure out whether that person was actually a fit. So I had that experience working for a large privately held company where I got to be in that sort of that founder mode as a leader, and act like a CEO within my own domain within the organization. And so that obviously I'm biased towards that. I'm greatly affected, but then I go into this world where now I'm in this kind of consulting teaching side. And I said, well, nobody's going to believe me. I'm 31. What are they going to think about me? And that's why I interviewed 10,000 people to start. And now I'm at over 15,000 people, and I'm a Malcolm Gladwell fan. And I did that with a high degree of intentionality. So I set out and I understood what the most scientifically, statistically best practices are. So structured interviews, scorecards, behavioral assessments, integrity assessments, aptitude, so cognitive ability, people EQ, skill sets, reference checking, and working interviews are all in the top 6 to 7 most predictive things that you can do. And if you study any of the gurus or any of the science or any of the people who preach this stuff, this was inspired by then. And then I took that a step further, saying like, well, I don't know, how do I believe this? Well, I partnered with Bowling Green State University, who's the top IO psychology program for talent assessment in the world. And they are our academic advisors. And we spent a lot of time researching and co-authoring scientific journal articles on these subjects, as well as just using external studies. So we knew like these are statistically the levers that are going to move the needle. And then we practiced. We did it with intentionality. So that's the difference between what I do and versus the person who gives everybody a 5-star. That 5-star person has no method to their madness.
No, that's what
there's no intentionality, right? So intention. Now when we make
you
mistakes,
use for your systems, you use like DISC or something.
Yeah, it's all of our assessments are proprietary, but the personality component, one of the personality components is a DISC style of assessment, the 4 personality, the DIS, dominant, influence, steady, conscientious style of personality measurement.
Similar to the Myers-Briggs kind of.
Myers-Briggs or something like that. And then we do have Big 5 assessments. We're a big fan of those too, but there's a little bit application, choosing the right assessment, using the information that you learn from those assessments that's also another skill set, though. Like you're applying the science correctly is a whole nother nuance to this. There are like 40 different things that you got to do to get hiring right. So there's a lot of little levers. Now, if you do
that answers my question. Why not everybody gets it right?
Yeah. If you do like 10 to 15 of them really, really well, you will move the needle in a big, big, big way too. Right.
Right. You don't have to do all 40.
Yeah, I mean, ideally you would, but that's not really. What
about? Let's switch over to the AI. I caught the AI bug here from our conversation. Hasn't there been some backlash around AI in assessment of resumes or AI in like candidate assessment? Aren't there? If I'm not mistaken, this is not my field; it's your field. But I heard that there were some laws passed like in New York around that. What do you think where's that going to go? I guess the question is what's happening with that?
I don't know where it'll go. I think, I'm not a politician and, I think with, the latest developments in our political shifts, I think everything's gonna be more deregulated. There's going to be less, you're already seeing like retractions and DEI stuff. And, I think there's some kind of like it's a little overkill to some degree, but these departments like the EEOC is going to get gutted in their ability to regulate and to come down on organizations is going to get, de-restricted. So, I don't know. That's just, my observations from the political climate from what's going to happen or, states and municipalities. Is the federal government going to ever come down on this? I doubt it, but it could. At the end of the day, though, actually, we're co-authoring a scientific journal article, Virginia Tech, and it hasn't been released yet, but it's ready for release. And we looked at AI rating of resumes versus human rating, and the AI raters were significantly less biased and created almost zero adverse impact versus the humans. So basically, the humans are racist and biased and discriminatory, and the AI is not. So, like, pick your poison, guys, right? So nothing's going to be perfect. It's like a self-driving car, Waymo, right? Well, yeah, do they get in accidents? Do they kill people sometimes? Yes. But they do it at like 90% less often than a human does. So
than people do.
What's better?
Yeah, I don't know. That's why I'm asking. That's why I'm asking the expert.
Everybody's going to have to make their own opinion on that. But I mean, the facts are.
But wait,
this
hold on a
stuff
second,
is better than the human. So
exactly. So what you're saying is that if a robot's really good at hammering nails, then why not let it hammer nails?
Yeah, and if it makes a mistake every once in a while, it's going to make
probably
it does it 90% less often than the human. Then
right. We're expecting
I'd rather have a robot doing it.
We're expecting the robot to be 100% flawless.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. And we don't have that same expectation of a human. Like what we do. I mean, people get mad when people aren't great at their job and they make mistakes, but somehow we put up with that.
Hey, this is William Tincup. Listen, we did a series for iSolved called Heroes of HR, where we talk to HR practitioners. And these are just your run-of-the-mill, everyday, slogging it out, 300 employees in Cedar Rapids, HR pros. Mostly it's centered around iSolved and what they do with iSolved, but also they talk a lot about kind of the day-to-day rigor of HR. If you're curious about that, search for Heroes of HR wherever you get your podcasts. Thank you.
Hey everybody, Tim Sackett, host of HR Famous, a new podcast on the Work Defined Network. Am I famous? No, I'm HR famous. My wife says I'm a micro celebrity and 13 HR ladies around the world want their picture with me, which I think is funny. So, hey, what do we talk about on the pod? We talk about all the dumb stuff we do in HR in any given day, week, month, and we have fun with it, and we have some great guests. Come check us out. We're not famous. We're HR famous.
I guess we do. I was thinking about that.
We
get mad, but we put up with it anyway. Yeah. I guess with a computer, we can't.
It's easier to get mad at, right?
Yeah, but we also can't vent to it. Be like, you screwed up. The computer's not gonna be like, oh, I'm so sorry.
Well, a lot of these LLMs are pretty nice, but
yeah, they are pretty nice, but they're also so wrong. So wrong in so many ways.
Yeah. So obviously human supervision of the computer is important. I mean, I'm not advocating that. And I'm also advocating, being transparent about these things. Like,
transparency, human supervision and transparency are absolutely required in my book. If you're not doing that, then you shouldn't be messing with this stuff.
Exactly. I would agree 100% on both.
There's no robot. I mean, like a robot does exactly what you tell it to do. So if you say it goes driving a straight line, it's going to do that until it falls off a cliff, and you can't then blame the robot for falling off the cliff because you told it to go a straight line. So somebody's got to be there, and be like, whoa, no, hold on, stop. That's not somewhere you want to go. Yeah. And yes, AI. I think what I'm seeing and hearing and reading about a lot now is these agents that are the do it for you as opposed to like ChatGPT and Copilot and Gemini and these other tools where they like do it with you, and they are tools to help you process things and But the agents are the new autonomous robots that you tell them to go get something and they're going to go and get it without asking you how to get it, where to get it, stuff like that. So that's where I'm a little bit more
leery.
Is the unsupervised agents. Yeah.
Look, I mean, it's going to happen. I mean, right now, we have AI assisting humans in every component of the hiring process at this point, baked right into Discovered, so it's in. And I think there are other platforms that are doing similar things, but so it's already there in the sort of the human assisted version of that is there, but the agent side of it is going to increase, and the agency of the AI will increase. Obviously at the end of the day, it's still a human to human thing. So is it going to be able to help you there very soon, and it might even be this year, Discovered will go and find your candidate. It will go engage your candidate. It will give them a compelling value proposition on why they should engage in this process and talk to you and entertain this opportunity. It will do initial evaluations of candidates, and it will schedule that candidate on a decision maker's calendar to make a final decision, and then aid that decision maker in their decision-making process through assessments and reference checking and all of these things. So we are like this close to, agents playing a much, much bigger role in hiring.
And that's good, you think?
Yeah, absolutely.
Do you think that you can put yourself in a little robot box and they don't need you anymore? Just the robot?
No, not yet. And again, I think the people who are leveraging these tools and that are managing these tools and directing these tools are going to be the ones that are, winning in the future of work, right? So, and I don't think you have a choice, because if you don't do it, somebody else is.
Well, if you're the founder.
No, you're the founder, but I mean, people in the team and, people who, my gripe, my team knows this. My gripe is you guys need to be using AI more. You need to be thinking about how to use it. You need to be, automating more of your processes and your tasks and things like that. Like, we have a small, lean team of 16 people. Like, nobody's going anywhere on my team. Like, we have no plans on letting anybody go. Like, but we're not going to add headcount.
Yeah, well, you're at the size that I guess I wasn't really specifically thinking about your team, but if
use myself as an example.
If we're building this out and it's, a company with more than 450 people, since that's the number that we picked, and we're building this out, I feel like there's got to be some other unseen. I like to find the unseen obstacles that just kind of come up and bite you. I like to prepare for those.
Well, I think the humans are going to be really bad at managing the robots, and they're going to get lazy, and they're not going to be as diligent as they should be. And that is the problem, right? They're going to gain too much trust in the robot
and let it drive by itself and then realize that it's causing accidents.
Yeah. Not intervene and not be proactive and not understand why, not take the time to understand why and correct. And it's the same thing we do with employees. We hire somebody to do a job and we don't train and onboard them very well. And we stick them out there in the field and then we blame them for being bad at their job. Like,
but you never taught me how to do that.
You never set expectations. You never, showed me where the damn water cooler was for that matter. Right. And now, wonder why, like I'm, dying of thirst over here, but no, so we do the same things with humans and we just hope for the best. And, so sometimes we do hire great people and then we fail them. So training and onboarding is the last piece of a fact-driven hiring system. And it's also one of the most overlooked parts. Like we just do a bad job.
We onboard everybody the same way. We give them all a checklist, and sometimes, people in certain roles need onboarding of certain.
Getting me to sign up for my health insurance is not helpful in me being successful in the job. Yes, it's important. Like we need to do this.
I need help.
I need my health insurance, but
I also need to know how to manage cases that come up. Yeah. So I want to go back to the assessment portion because it's the part that I understand the least, right? It's not, I've only been responsible for selecting assessment tools maybe 5 times. Yeah. And it was, as I take everything, I just did a bunch of research and comparisons and stuff like that. Yeah. From what I learned, isn't it always a good practice to assess your internal team first and have a baseline before
benchmark, we call it.
Yeah.
Yeah. I like
to assess external candidates.
Yeah, I mean, for larger organizations,
or is that a bad idea? I guess. No,
I think it's a great idea. I mean, the challenge I run into with large organizations is it kind of comes back to all the same challenges. Like, they have like really bad data, and they don't evaluate their internal people very well in a very structured, meaningful way. So then what they have to do then is they have to go do that, right? So not only do they have to assess a large portion of people in their workforce. I mean, you need to assess a minimum of 100 basically to get to any sort of statistically valid benchmark, right?
Okay.
So, that you got to have an organization,
100 internal.
Yeah. And they got to be like in
benchmarks.
Basically the same job, right? Now there's some variance. It could be like, tier 1, 2, 3, 4. But I mean, you got to be basically doing the same job, right? Like,
okay. Yeah. I got
and then, you have to, have some clear criterion data like performance metrics, or it could be subjective that is termed more objective, like a performance evaluation, where I'm actually grading you on a scale of 1 to 3, 1 to 5, whatever. We talked about that. 1 to 3 scale is nice, with also some justification for that. But you got to have some quantifiable hard data to say, hey, this person's good, this person's okay, and this person's not good, right? And that could be, again, sales metrics, customer service metrics, you name it, performance reviews, performance evaluations. And you got to do that with a large group of people. And then you got to let the statistics speak, because at the end of the day, we are, again, still talking about humans. There's not going to be a 1-for-1 correlation. If they score like this, they will guarantee to be great. What you're going to find is, if they score like this, they will be 10%, 20%, 50%, 90% better than if they're not.
Oh,
that's the reality, right?
So it's a probabilistic kind of approach.
Yes, it's all statistics.
You still need to do.
There's no 1-for-1 and we all know this in hiring. Doesn't matter what structured interview, reference. I mean, any technique you do, none of it's going to produce a 1-for-1 outcome. Like, if you do this and they are like that, they will be good. There's no 1-for-1 in anything we do in hiring, right?
Yeah.
But we can move the needle in meaningful ways. 30% improvement, 50%, 90% improvement in the quality of life.
That makes sense.
Right.
Yeah. That makes sense. So you'd have to have a little bit of a history in order to have an improvement. You'd have to have some hiring of history.
Measurable.
Yeah. That's a good point. In other words, if you didn't measure it before, then whoopsie. Yeah. Gotcha.
Yeah. So what the reality happens is it evolves a little bit over time, right? And ideally we try to get organizations to participate in providing feedback into that process. And if you're a small organization, I would do the same thing. And that's typically how these journeys always begin. Hey, test 2 or 3 people. It gives you a little bit of a litmus test. You can take assessment results and compare against the other person. But the problem with that is then they tend to rely too much on that comparison and not, they're too rigid. They're like, it must be just like Joe.
Okay.
Right? And it's like,
yeah.
well,
and that's not good either.
That's a little, you only have one sample.
Is that the biggest fallacy in assessments, is over comparing? Or what would you say is the biggest fallacy, misconception, error people can commit with regard
that it's
to
absolute, right? That the information that you're getting is an absolute yes or no, like that it is black and white is that, again, I mean, a scorecard, structured interviews, references, working interview, and assessments. And then you're taking all of that information. And I think about it as like a T-chart. You got pros and cons. And, as long as the con's not a deal breaker, if the con's a deal breaker, it's done, right? But if it's pros and cons, and then hopefully
they weigh each other.
Yeah, it might be weighted. Like, here are the 3 really important.
So the assessment
attributes.
is a portion of, and it. Yeah, I see what you're saying.
And it's great.
So one of the biggest fallacies is people just assume, it's a pass or fail.
Yeah, exactly.
Right? And there is no such thing as a pass or fail.
It's just like in an interview. There's no such thing as a pass or fail. I mean, we make it a pass or fail, but it's not actually the reality. It's just a decision we made based on the outcome of the interview. And again, what you're doing in your head, whether you formalize this or not, is you're saying, well, I like this about the person. I didn't like this person about this. And I like this person. I didn't like this. And therefore I'm going to move forward, or I'm not going to move forward.
Tell me this, assuming that we have calibrated interviewers. In other words, we don't have all 5s or all 1s, right? We have interviewers that are giving good reasons, and they're around that, and they support they're calibrated. We'll just assume that they're calibrated. How many do we need? How many interviewers do we need in an interview? That's not the question.
I mean, I think there's
interviewing.
Yeah, I think that's just such a varied question depending on the role. I mean, certain organizations or teams are, multifaceted and, typically
so proportional to the complexity of the organization.
Yeah. Really, it's that hiring manager is the primary decision maker and should be the only one that has absolute yes or no veto power. Yeah. So one thing I don't like about panel interviews or multiple interviewers, and I'm not against them. Again, I think there's an application for them in probably lots of scenarios, but that you shouldn't give anybody other than the decision maker absolute yes or no power.
Right. But in a typical, oh God, I hate this question. In a typical organization, more than 500 employees is not too complex. What's the maximum number of others than the hiring manager? Like 2?
Yeah, 2 or 3, total 2 or 3, including the hiring manager. You're talking 2 or 3.
Yeah.
You got your recruiter. I don't count that, frankly. No offense to the recruiters out there, but the recruiter is just a gatekeeper to, does this person go from a suspect to a prospect?
The recruiter is one of the things in the pros and cons.
Yeah, and they'll add in, they'll throw it in.
The assessment's not definitive. The recruiter's not definitive. I get it. So the recruiter contributes.
As a recruiter, I don't have time to make an absolute, complete, thorough evaluation of this candidate. I am checking certain boxes and litmus tests, like, is this guy a jerk or not or whatever. Like,
yeah, but again, it's one of the things in that. So yeah, that's what I was. So not including the recruiter. Interviewers on the hiring manager's behalf.
No more than 3, including the hiring manager.
I've struggled with this a lot because I've been in one very large organization that I was in, where they had 7, and it was complex. I grant that, but it wasn't like the 7 were different departments. It was like 7 people from 1 or 2 department, like, it was just, I feel like at some point, and then they asked for consensus.
Yeah. So forget about consensus. That's, I see this in professional services where I work, like we work in public accounting a lot, consulting engineers, they have a lot of partners and they all have to have consensus, and because they're all kind of decision makers, and this person will kind of report to all of these people. And so it gets really messy in that sense. So, but again, I would try to minimize that as much as possible, even in those types of environments. But you got the hiring manager, the leader, you've got maybe the person this person's going to work closely with, their dotted line type of person, and, or dotted line from another department leader, like, okay, sales works closely with customer success. So the leader from customer success is going to interview the new salesperson, and the sales manager is going to read them. And then the best salesperson or a good, solid team player, culture fit salesperson is also going to interview to give just some feedback from a peer-to-peer perspective. So that's your 3, right? That's how you might get to 3, right?
Right. Tell me this. I've hired quite a few people for myself, my own teams that I'm building over the years. And I've always really kind of second guessed myself. But when I find somebody that I really, 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 really like, and I want to hire, it's like, I know, I've made offers on the spot during first interviews before, and they've most of the time turned out, I'm not saying that, they always worked out great. Where I feel like I've gone wrong is when I've been forced to have other people weigh in, and the other people weighed in with a stronger opinion of the candidate than I did.
What does it really take to lead with impact in today's ever-evolving world? Welcome to Inside the C-Suite, the podcast where influence, energy, innovation, and empathy converge. Hi, I'm Christy Honeycutt, your host. Join me as I sit down with the boldest voices in leadership, visionaries who are not just making decisions, but making a difference. In every episode, we explore the heart of leadership. How do high-performing leaders harness their energy? How do they lead with empathy without losing their edge? How do they turn disruption into innovation and pressure into purpose? You'll hear unfiltered stories of adversity, resilience, and the raw moments that shaped true influence. This isn't about perfection. It's about presence, passion, and the energetic exchange that fuels transformation. Inside the C-Suite is your invitation to lead from a deeper place with intention, connection, and courage. If you're ready to go beyond the surface and unlock what really moves leaders to action, hit subscribe and step inside. You can find us wherever you get your podcast fix. Inside the C-Suite, well, we're an energetic exchange. Let's lead with influence, live with energy, and create with empathy.
Leading a growing business, it's like building a plane while flying it. Team building, decision-making, and scaling all at once. At CPO Playbook, we get it. That's why our podcast, ranked in the top 10% worldwide, tackles the toughest leadership challenges with insights to help you lead smarter and grow faster. Tune into the CPO Playbook podcast because leadership doesn't come with a manual, but we're pretty close.
In other words,
Like positive?
yeah. So
Yeah.
if I met someone and I'm the only interviewer so far, and I'm like, oh my God, this is the person.
Yeah.
Usually that works out. It hasn't. There have been a couple of times when it didn't work out.
Yeah.
Really badly didn't work out, by the way. But better than 50%. No, I'm just kidding. Yeah. Better
well,
than
probably. I mean, you're an experienced
better than
interviewer, man. I mean,
70%, right?
you've
Better
probably
than
interviewed more people than I have. I mean, geez, but
But when because of policy, my manager, my boss, my leader has said, you have to have these two people interview this candidate in order to complete the 3 interviews. And the other 2 people liked them more than I did. I didn't say no, but I was like, nee. And then the other 2 people were like, yes. And then I've hired them.
Well, you should have done more. You should have done more. You should have done more interviews and made up your. I mean, if you were the hiring manager and this person ultimately report to you is ultimately your problem. If it doesn't work out, then again, you can always have more conversations and try to get to the same place those other people are.
Why is it that sometimes I go, oh my God, you're it, and sometimes I'm like, yeah.
Okay, so I love this scenario. I'm going to dumb it down really simply for people.
Okay, thanks.
Your gut can tell you no about somebody. So I'm okay with that. Like if you meet someone and you're just like, there's no way this is going to work, just move on. I don't care what your reasons are. Now, obviously try not to be like discriminatory
racist
about that.
Yeah, right.
But like, again, if it's like, I don't know, like you go on a first date with somebody and you're just like, I don't see us ever falling in love. Like, I don't know. You're okay. You're allowed to not just say, I don't want to go on another date with you. That's fine. Right. So same thing applies. Now
but this is the opposite.
Your gut cannot your gut can tell you yes, but you better figure out a way to decloud your infatuation with this person, to figure out, to uncover facts and evidence that support that.
To support your yes.
Yes, because boy, you might find out. And a perfect example of this, we met a guy who was site superintendent for a small construction development company. Met this guy in really amazing resume, really amazing background, really impressive guy. You meet him, knows his stuff, right? Like does everything, passes assessments, does everything. We get to reference checks only and background checks only to find out this guy's been sued twice for fraud, for embezzling and creating these fraudulent schemes to skim money from his previous employers. So I don't care how much you love that person. Do not hire them.
Right. Man, I got so glued into this. I totally went over time here. I'm so sorry about that.
No worries.
Before I let you go though, you're not gonna get away with not answering my 2 questions. That's a double negative, but I apologize. Number 1 question before you go is, who should be our next guest?
Oh, that's a good one. Well, I mean, I'm a big fan of Lou Adler. You might have had him on there. So, that's a good one. And I think, Brian Fink, and, he's a cool dude.
He's been on here a few times. Yeah,
a few times. Right. Adam Meekinoff.
Don't know him.
Yeah.
Spell that.
I'm a terrible speller. I'm going to send it to you. I'll send you his LinkedIn profile.
Right.
He's a good dude that I've come across here not too long ago. Who's a really good guy? He's a new partner of ours. Ryan England. I can send you him. Core Matters, and he's a really structured hiring process. He consults. He's not a recruiter.
He's a consultant. Like me.
He's a consultant. He helps people install these repeatable hiring systems into their business. And boy, you should talk to him. And he works.
All right, I got 3. That's good.
Yeah, there you go.
Yeah, you're ahead. I'm gonna need that last name though. But
yeah, I'll get him to you. Yeah,
definitely. And then the last question is, I want you to leave our listeners with a question to ask themselves, a question of introversion, right? Something that they should ask themselves and think deeply about over the next. A lot of people watch this over the weekend, so.
Yeah,
it could be related to everything we talked about, or it could be something different, just something that we should think about for ourselves.
Well, I know your audience is big recruiters,
Talent acquisition,
talent acquisition and sourcers and things. And I have a lot of sympathy for the role that recruiters play in the process. Is your desire to hit the metric of a placement clouding your judgment when it comes to helping the organization construct a system to decide whether this person is going to be a top performer, a high quality hire or not? Are you looking at the right metrics to judge your own performance? And high quality hire should be the metric, not time to fill or how many placements. Now, those are important metrics.
You're saying, are you filling a job or are you making the best? Are you supporting the best hiring decision?
Yes, exactly. So,
oh man, I hate the answer to that.
Oh yeah,
I hate the answer to that.
You're not most TA people are not incentivized to produce a high quality hire. They're paid to produce a hire who's hireable, who the hiring manager is willing to hire as fast as possible.
But wouldn't it be nice though if we did all think about that?
Yeah,
that's really cool.
If everybody was in alignment, and how are you going to get your leadership team to align with you in that goal? And maybe adjust the time to fill expectations
to get that extra oomph.
Yeah. At the end of the day, quality takes a little more time than just finding a resume that the hiring manager is willing to say yes to.
I love it. Yeah. Are you just filling the job or are you actually helping the organization make the best decision possible? Yeah. Man, thanks a lot for being on the show. Appreciate it. Hopefully you don't hopefully you don't burn and hopefully everybody else doesn't freeze.
Yeah.
So stay safe, everybody. Keep yourselves dry and warm out there. And we will see you here next week with our guest. Coming up next week is Tracy Friend. You might recognize her from, actually, she's pretty well known in the industry. So Tracy Friend is currently VP of Talent at a global payments company called Global Pay. So join us next week for that. Fletcher, thanks a lot. Appreciate it.
Thank you for having me.
Be kind to yourselves. Take care, everybody.